All right, so I was having my morning coffee and I saw this video on Twitter and I knew that we had to do a reaction video to it because this is going to be some A-grade leftist bullshit, but very informative because one thing that we like to do a lot is analyze people's language because, they may say that the eyes are the window to the soul, but language is the window to the brain. And if you know how to analyze it sufficiently, it's the window to the way the brain is working, what ideas and strategies people put forward and try to defend. You can see it in their language, and you'll know what I mean as we go along. So let's have a listen. I literally got 5 seconds into this, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be a worthwhile analysis.
But my feeling is they should open the border, and just let them pour in, let everybody pour in, and then the answer, which is, well, then there will be all these problems. Yes, there should be. It shouldn't be so great here, is what I'm...
I did hear this before, but could you imagine saying that in public, out loud? It shouldn't be so great here. Yeah.
In America, it shouldn't be. It's a weird thing to sequester a certain group of people and try to keep upping their lifespan and their lifestyle, and just keep trying to increase that for this group of people, and then this pressure of people trying to come in so they can enjoy it, and then it gets worse and worse down here. I mean, I'm not in Canada. It's really just from down here. There's something wrong with that. That's not a system that's working, and it forces...
So I just was Googling what exactly is the definition of sequester. I mean, I feel like I know, but I wanted to get the actual definition. To isolate or hide away. To isolate or hide away something.
People to do cruel things to other people. There's a lot of people
let's go back.
Forces people to do cruel things to other people. There's a lot of people that die so Americans can be safe. They're just dying, weddings that are drone bombed in Yemen because the guy said something that might have resulted in American insecurity. Not even like definite American deaths, but like just so we can breathe a little easier. Folks die. And folks do labor in unsafe places so that we can keep the prices where we like them. There's so much about American life that other people pay for. That's part of it. But also, it's not good for us either. It's not a good way to live in a gated community, If you let folks pour in, like any other wave, it'll kind of slosh. And then things will be different. I don't know, what'll really happen? A bunch of people, will they just come with knives and start killing everybody? I don't think so.
Right. I just have to say it's just continually so disappointing that people like this actually exist. Because what he's saying is so profoundly anti-reality, so profoundly stupid. It's really hard to actually begin pulling it apart. I mean, having now listened to the whole clip, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to come with knives? Yeah, that's exactly what did happen in Europe. And in the Bataclan, yeah, that was pretty gruesome. People did literally come with knives and start chopping people's bodies apart in the theater. So, yeah, that's what happened. I'm a little bit triggered now because it's just so fucking stupid. Really, at this point, I'm just sad that people like this exist, to be honest. I really am. I'm just so disappointed that not only that this loser exists, but that he's elevated by the powers that be. But look, this is more and more my feeling is that the people that do know better put idiots like this that don't know better in front of the faces of you and I for their own fun and profit. Anyway, so that is exactly what happened. I do have some sympathies for what he mentions, the war in Iraq. I did protest against that because I felt like, they had it on very shaky foundations. I know that some people, they went in and under shaky foundations. They certainly left. Biden left. It was an absolute catastrophe in the leaving. But you have to understand too, well, what was the main sell for doing that? What was the main sell for doing that was the fact that, regardless of what you think the conspiracy theories are, 3,500 New Yorkers died. So one of the central, hearts of America was attacked directly, and people died. And so, once again, how you get from we should open the borders because things are too great here, let's let them all in, and we need to do that because people actually died overseas, how you can ignore the causality of the people in New York dying, I must arrive at the conclusion that people like this idiot simply hate the society they're in. They simply hate it. They hate the people in it. And I talk about this a lot. Before the second point, I'll make the second point. But the first thing is he goes, open the borders. Things need to be worse here, which is so profoundly stupid. I don't even know where to start, but we will start on it. But then the justification is, well, other people die so that we can enjoy this life here, that we feel safe. So he's saying that because of a misguided and unjustified desire for Americans to feel safe, that's the causality of say wedding bombings in the Middle East or whatever from from America trying to kill terrorists. I have sympathy for innocent people in the Middle East dying, absolutely. But is it completely unfounded for America to want the other places in the world that whether conspiracy or not, that are exporting terrorists? Is it unfounded for Americans to want those places to be managed to be safer for Americans when the whole causality there was that they attacked people in New York and people actually died? So when Chubbs McGee here is like scrubbed that causality from his mind, I always say our minds seek to acquire, like our awareness is evolved to focus in on what we're trying to acquire, what we value. And so when something gets scrubbed from your mind, obviously, I must conclude that it's probably because you don't value it. So when in this chain of pseudo reasoning that this imbecile is trying to put forward, when the fact that 3,500 Americans died in New York, when that doesn't factor into the calculation, I can only assume that's because he doesn't care, because he doesn't value it. And so then I think, well, why don't you care? Probably because you hate the country you're in and you hate the people in it. And what would be driving that? I talk about this all the time. Human beings pursue status. And people have talked about this a lot, with leftism being the philosophy of envy. It's not so much that they love the poor, but they hate the rich. And once again, the analysis of that statement is that a lot of leftists are looking at the people above them in other ways. Maybe they're more genetically fit, they're happier families, maybe they're richer, maybe they're not, maybe they're just more normal. And someone like Louis C.K. can have money and fame. Apparently, you'd be surprised how much money famous people often don't have. They can be often not particularly rich. They're usually semi-comfortable, and they're usually at the point where they take too many drugs and make too many dumb decisions and they go broke. So they're usually not runaway rich. But you'll find with a lot of people like this, comedians, creatives, artists, actors, blah, 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 they usually have this mental and emotional chaos. And even that would be enough for them to be envious of normal people. You can have a lot of money and fame or whatever, but there's something in the wiring there that's just a little bit detached from reality. And that will trigger a status envy, because they may look at other people who don't have fame and talent and money, but they're just happy and they're just not actually torturing themselves constantly in their own mind. So once again, status envy. Leftism has been called many times the philosophy of envy, and the idea that they don't so much love the poor, because there are so many tangible things you could do to help poor people that they never do. All they ever want to do is tax wealthier people, tear down wealthier people, tear down structures that make people wealthy, tear down structures of education and things like that, blah, 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 blah. And before you say, oh, well, leftists are always all about education. What is education now is indoctrination. It is not education. So they hate education because education in the sense that I'm talking about it would be reliant on learning how to think and learning about reality. And often reality has conclusions that leftists find intolerable. And so instead of paying the costs of cognitive adaptation, instead of maturing their brain and their emotions to be able to comprehend truths about the world that they don't like, such as that people are unequal, they instead retreat back into ideology and religions and wishful thinking. And when they codify all these ideologies and wishful thinking into indoctrination, that's usually what they call education, but that's not what I'm calling education. So, status envy. Why does he want things to be less great? Why do people want anything around them to be less great? It's because even if it actually is great and they have a safe, wealthy life where they have the freedom to pursue whatever goal they want in life, and you certainly would say that about old Chubbs here, but didn't this guy masturbate into a plant or something? Anyway, I should be on Joe Rogan, not this idiot. The point being, even when things are great, they feel status envy. They feel angry or unsettled or anxiety about existing in a place where things are actually good because it requires of them agency, cognitive agency. So if you live in a town where nobody swears, the guy that is disgustingly, minded or whatever, it's a greater cost on his brain to stop himself from swearing, and so he doesn't like that cost. He would prefer there would be no standards, so everybody swears or does whatever. Or say the person with extreme emotional problems that self-medicates through hard drugs. Living in a society that outlaws drugs makes it a lot harder for them, but not everyone else who's emotionally stable and doesn't need drugs. Someone like me is not particularly into drugs or anything like that. It's not hard for me to live in a society where drugs are outlawed, whereas if you've got mental problems like this guy, a society that says drugs are illegal, he's going to have a harder time with it. It's going to have a bigger cost on his brain and his emotions trying to self-regulate. And so one option that he might come up with is, well, how about I just undermine the standards that say the drugs should be illegal? Then it's easier on me and I can pass the cost on to everybody else who does, they can put up with all the druggos. So there's mental adaptation. There's also status envy. He might also feel envious of people who aren't, like I said, mentally unstable, and then want to change his environment to suit him rather than suit people like me who are mentally stable. That's what's going on all of the time. So when people say things need to be less great here, it's because they're a loser, or they're mentally unstable, or they're just an idiot, or they're just lazy or immature and they don't want to grow up and grow their mature their cognitive facilities to adapt to a high trust, high status, peaceful, rule of law abiding society. They would rather tear it down. That is the essence of the saying, some people would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven, i.e. be high status or very comfortable or successful in hell, i.e. a low trust, scummy society full of, druggos and weirdos and crime and theft, blah, blah, blah. Some people feel more comfortable there and they thrive better there than serving, i.e. being low status, being a bit of no one, but, in heaven being a high trust society, low crime, no druggos, no weirdos, etc. So that's what he's saying here. The second thing, well, that was kind of my second point. So first point is what he's saying makes no sense. Okay, well, we need to let all these people in because we bomb people in the Middle East. What are they going to do? Attack us? Well, yes, exactly. That's what they have done in Europe, and the whole causality of going to the Middle East was that Americans were attacked in New York. So completely emotional gobbledygook garbage. Completely reversing the causality. And I've said a lot of times too, leftists inhabit this upside down world of just everything's inverted. Like, I will make the claim that leftists are wrong about absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. And the degree to which I can prove that is the degree to which you are comfortable learning unpleasant truths about the world. But I'll leave it at that. But, one of their fundamental beliefs is that everybody's the same except you. So it doesn't even make any difference, except conservatives, they're evil. It's so stupid. Anyway, so first point is nonsensical reverse causality, upside down leftist emotional wishful thinking reasoning as usual. Second point, status envy. This is what status envy looks like. We are just fortunate enough to have this idiot say the quiet part out loud, that they would like you to be less rich. They would like you to be less safe. They would like your societies to be less safe, wealthy, successful, etc. They want to pull you down so that they feel better, and that they're covering their status envy behind this faux concern for people from other countries. And of course, one of the things that me and other people do in these videos, and a lot of people have done, and even all our own law and governmental systems have also done, is write down the rules and laws and the little tinkerings of our society, and really pick apart what's going on with people, with law, with psychology, with economics, with business, trust, families, intergenerational relationships, intersex relationships, all that sort of stuff. We explain everything that's going on, and all anyone else has to do is listen and learn and put it into practice themselves. But once, remember I talked about, so say, yeah, okay, you want some other country to stop being a third world shithole. Well, listen to me or people like me, and you're going to learn how to do that. Stop stealing and create a high trust commons, which can allow markets and private property to thrive, and you'll start creating wealth. But remember I talked about your appetite for unpleasant truths. The unpleasant truth is that a lot of people, even if you tell them, even if you show them, even if you invest, even if you pay them, they simply can't do it. It would be like Louis C.K. here and me saying, dude, make a logical thought instead of an upside down world emotional diatribe of nothing, of bullshit. And he can't do it. Can't do it because it's genetic. And so, all right. Third point, I wanted to Google this word sequester. So to sequester is to isolate or hide away. So he says, what did he say here? These people are being sequestered.
Trying to increase that for their lifestyle.
Hang on.
And just keep upping their lifespan.
Right.
And is what I'm saying. In America, it shouldn't be. It's a weird thing to sequester a certain group of people and try to keep upping their lifespan and their lifestyle.
All right. I probably should have started with this because this is probably my most important thought here. Remember I opened by saying that language, we analyze language to see how people's brains are ticking over. This is one thing I've noticed for years about leftists. Their entire cognitive framework, the entire way that comes through the language that I'm saying their brain works, the way their brain works is that their arguments are always based on this idea that things come down from above, that they're given to us, or that the rules come down from us. Much in the same way that do my kids go and create food? No, I give it to them. I give them food. I give them what they need. So, you know what I mean? If you have the mind of a child, you think that everything's just given to you. And when somebody else gets given more or less, you think that's unfair, and that you should complain to the giver for an equalization of that. So that's what I'm trying to say, especially even with the feminists, or when they say, well, men are given opportunities unfairly. Or the communists, they say, we need to redistribute wealth. In that language is the assumption that it was distributed to begin with, where it's not distributed. And, once again, there's a very thin veil of civilization that uncovers the base truths, but those base truths are still there. You just have to look for them. What I mean by that is there's a state of nature, and we live in that state of nature, but we have a wealthy civilization that allows us to believe that we are free of that, but we're actually not. And the veil of civilization that lets people imagine that they aren't in a state of nature it's not as thick as you'd think it is. And so let me put it another way. If we live in a pre-civilized tribe in the middle of nowhere, and I go, say I'm like this one guy in a tribe of 150 people, and I go, I'm going to walk over that way into the woods, and I'm going to get some sticks and twigs and vines, and I'm going to like wrap it around and break some twigs, and I'm going to put together a hut, a little shelter. Like we're all sitting around in this paddock, just being a whole bunch of pre-civilized humans and sitting around, and I go, I'm going to go over there and build a hut. And I go and build a hut because for some reason I'm, one of the smarter ones or whatever. And then people like this idiot here come up and go, oh, it's so unfair that you were given a hut. Why didn't I get a hut? And like, what are you talking about? It's like what, from God, from nature? I wasn't given a hut, I made it. I made it. But what you find with leftists is implicit in their language is this idea that things are given to them by something above them. Much in the same way of like the consciousness, the reality of a child is that things come from their parents. You know what I mean? And so when he says we've sequestered these people, haven't sequestered shit. It's not even true. It's like it's fantasy land stuff. People in the West trade. The Anglosphere created the idea, well, not created, but we modernized in the modernized world the idea of global trade. That's one thing we do very well is trading everywhere. So sequestering, that's not even true. And so once again, he's saying, it's not fair that we take this group of people and we try to raise their standards of living and their life expectancy, etc. That's not even what's happening. What's happening is that some people are working and innovating and high trust and acting well, and they are receiving the benefits of costs, investment, risk-taking, work into these high trust commons, and they're having returns. Much in the same way that I walk off into a forest and I invest my time, my energy, I take the risks, and I build a hut. Well, I get to sit in that hut. Yeah, maybe you can come with me if I make a big enough one, but nobody gave me the hut. I worked, I took risks, I invested. That's what's going on. But once you see with the leftists, it's like, oh, we need to redistribute the hut. The hut was never distributed in the first place. It's another topic. So once again, that is one thing that you always see with leftists is implicit in this language is that things are given to them from above or not, and that's unfair. They never say, like this guy here, well, some people are having very successful returns on their high trust commons and on their risks and their investments. Therefore, we should teach other people to do that. No. He's saying, well, it's unfair that Americans are given this, but Ugandans are given this. They're not. Nobody's given anything. Americans are the people that and anyone who does anything is the person that walked off into the thing and said, into the forest and said, I'm going to make a hut. Okay, yeah, maybe you inherited the hut a little bit from your dad, but once again, this is another just leftist inverted talking point where they're like, well, some people are given it, it's not fair. Well, if you can't give something to your children, what the hell can you do? So that is fair, You're not the rich person's kid. Their kids are their kids, so they're going to get stuff. Like, that's the way the world works. Shut up, But if you understand anything about money and power and status and all that sort of things, when you have stuff, people are always trying to get it off you. We're living, cooperative competition. So if you're an idiot or you don't know how to run the family business, it's only a matter of time before someone usually takes it over, takes your market share, takes your wealth, and you're done for. So unless you actually have the organic intelligence, conscientiousness, learning, mental cognitive agency, etc., to maintain structures of capital, they won't last long anyway. So you can spend, and here we go. How long have I been recording? Let's have a look. 25 minutes or so, 20 minutes. So what he says in a minute and a half takes 20 minutes. I mean, I probably could have said it quicker, but takes 10, 15 minutes to really logically pull apart how wrong it is. And this is what the left does, is that they actually fling shit at you faster than you can wipe it off, basically. I always like the analogy of say you have a fine china shop and you get a 2-year-old and you give him a hammer and you set that child loose in that china shop, and it's your job to walk behind him, piece everything together and glue it all back together again. Who's going to expend the greater amount of energy? The child carelessly swinging his hammer and destroying everything, or you trying to piece it all back together and glue all this stuff together behind it? It's an impossible mismatch of energy, and this is what the left does. They fling shit, and by the time, you actually spend 20 minutes or so debunking what they're talking about and explaining it from first principles and reality, they've moved on, and most people, I'm not just talking about leftists, most people won't listen. I've got no illusions that most people won't listen to my videos. I do it for you wonderful people who actually take the time. So thank you. But that's what they do. That's what they do. And why do they do this? Because it's a power strategy for them. That is their strategy, is wielding unreality, wielding bullshit, wielding lies to manipulate the minds of the cognitively infantile. And anyone who can see through it, well, they're not the target audience. Anyone who watches my videos is not the target audience, because you need to have more attention, more IQ, whatever it is, I don't know, a combination of things. And the leftists, that you're not their target audience. So manipulators and the manipulated, that's really the handshake agreement that's going on with a lot of the left, so that the manipulators can express their envy, their status envy, and tear down their betters, whilst all using the dependents, the manipulated, as their moral cover. That's what's going on. I hope you found that useful. But once again, I think the biggest takeaway for me that I wanted to talk about here is just the way that when you see this in leftist language, they always speak with the implicit axiom that things are distributed, that things are actually given to people, and often unfairly, where they're not. They're not. If you spoke with the language of agency and maturity, you'd say nobody gave that person anything. It's like going to the gym. Oh, well, it's not fair that he was given more than the fair share of muscles. He wasn't distributed muscles. He's been in the gym for 10 years. Yes, there's some biological stuff, I know that. But you know what? Nature is nobody's fault, so get over it and shut up. Get over it and shut up, because the state of nature is nobody's fault. So, yeah, well, you're going to complain about biology. But you know what? A lot of these leftists, you say, these people are just inherently, smarter or harder working, whatever. And yeah, maybe it's genetic. They'll say, whoa, I don't care if it's genetic. What we want is the government to have so much power to equalize the state of nature. That's what they want, which is, for the manipulated, it's a bait into a false promise, because that's not even possible. The government will never have enough power to equalize biology. It will never. And you can, if you tax people so much you're going to try, all you'll do is destroy everything. And you'll equalize people at the bottom. But the manipulated, they're all high on wishful thinking, so they don't realize that. But the manipulated, once again, we get back to, it's fine for them because they will rule in hell.